Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is so exciting. We had, I think, 330 people register for this reading. And I think the poets that we have today are wonderful and exciting. And I think the topic is one that hits a chord. You know, it's been, given the continuing pandemic and the isolation and the struggles that some of us and many of us have gone through, as well as the ordinary aspects of life, you know, when we have illness or death or any of those things, often we turn to poetry for healing. And when Ellen suggested this as a topic and to launch her book, Left Foot, Right Foot, I thought this is a fabulous idea. And I'm so glad that Lynn Ellis agreed to join us as well. And so I will introduce each of them. They will talk about they'll read some of their poems. They'll talk about the healing properties of writing and reading poetry. And they'll each also read a poem that they have found of someone else's that resonates with them on this theme of healing. So just for those of you who might be new, the Poets Corner was founded by myself, Meg Weston, and my co-founder, Catherine Seitz, who is not on with us today. But in June of 2020, to create community, writing can be a solitary thing. And we thought, wouldn't it be great to create a community around writing and reading, listening to poetry and short prose? And that's what we did. And we host readings usually on the second Sunday of each month from 4 to 5:30. And it's really grown over this last year and a half. We have almost 2,000 subscribers today, and we have a 14-person wonderful advisory board. And I'm so glad for their help in helping us think about the future of the Poets Corner and how we grow. We will be recording. We are recording today's event. So if you don't want your image to appear, please just turn your video off. We will be taking questions through the chat later on. So I'll be scanning the chat to try to make sure that we capture your questions for Lynn and Ellen. And we usually go for about an hour, and then we open it up for even more questions and also possibly comments from those listeners and participants. I want to tell you about our next reading on February 13th. Will be on the theme of Love is Still Possible. And it will be hosted and curated by Gibson Faye LeBlanc, Margaret Haberman, and Anna Lamonta Salisbury. And they will be reading, I believe, one of their own poems. I'm not sure yet, but as well as poems from other people, contemporary love poems. So I hope that you'll come back for that event. And on January 3rd, we launched our first ever poetry chapbook contest. It's a collaboration between the Poets Corner and Maine Media Workshops in College. And it has a $1,000 prize and 20 copies of a handcrafted letterpress printed chapbook that will be printed in the Charles Altschul Studio for Book Arts at Maine Media, designed by Richard Wright Smith. And if you're interested in entering, the submissions will be open until February 28th, 2022. And you can get all that information about how to submit on our website, thepoetscorner.org. And the judge for this contest will be the poet Naomi Shihab Nye. So we're thrilled that she's agreed to be our judge and juror for this first ever chapbook contest. So now let's return to today's program. We're going to begin today with the poet Ellen Goldsmith, whose recently published book, Left Foot, Right Foot, is available through Maine Authors Publishing. And I'm going to put some information in the chat about how you can order her book. But introducing each segment of today's program, we're going to display an image. And these photographers have generously granted us permission to use their images as a way of introducing the thoughts, ideas, setting the tone and the mood for the poems that follow. So each of our poets have selected images from photographers. And our first image, if you'll put that on the screen, Lucas, is called Tree and Boat. And it's an image by Arduina Caponegro. And you can see more of Artie's images at acaponegro.com. And I'll put that in the chat as well, in case you don't know how to spell Caponegro. And I'm sure you'll want to see more of her images. But now to introduce Ellen. For many of you, Ellen needs no introduction. You're here because you know her, and you know what a wonderful poet and teacher she is. Her books include the book she'll be reading from today called Left Foot, Right Foot, but also Where to Look, Such Distances, and No Pine Tree in This Forest is Perfect. That one won the 1997 Slappering Hall Press Chapbook competition, and it was described by Dennis Nurst as an incandescent collection. Her poems have also appeared in many journals and in anthologies. Ellen earned an EDD from Teachers College, Columbia University, and has an MA in English from City College, and graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Queens College. She is Professor Emeritus from City University of New York. In 2006, she relocated to Maine, where she enjoys the rich literary landscape of the Mid-Coast, as well as the always changing views of Broad Cove from her home in Cushing. For Ellen, poetry is essential. It's a way to explore and discover, uncover and recover. About Ellen's new book, Left Foot, Right Foot, the literary critic, poet, and author Carl Little says, and I quote, "These are unstinting, deftly crafted poems, contain the mess that is life. Goldsmith can be fierce, funny, frayed, as she deals with the unknowns of illness and seeks to recover an aroma of normal. There is an intimacy here that sways the heart." And that's from Carl Little, the author of Ocean Drinker, New and Selected Poems. So please join me in welcoming Ellen Goldsmith.
Meg, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm just beyond thrilled looking at all the people who I know who are here, and I'm thrilled that there are people here who I don't know. So all the poems I'll read, as Meg indicated, are from my most recent book, Left Foot, Right Foot, and it's an illness and recovery story. Since it's a story, there are characters, me, of course, my husband, Vic, my daughter, Emily, and medical professionals. I'm grateful to all of those people. I began the poems in the early stages of recovery and kept writing for 8 or 9 months. They're poems of urgency and of reflection. I'm going to read a few poems now. Lynn's going to read some poems after that. We're going back and forth, kind of. So the first poem I'm going to read has the title Last. It could be my last poetry reading, my last easy up and down the stairs, my last time in my studio, my last slice of apple tart. 2 playground photos, a familiar sparkle in my eyes and a wide smile at 5, a searching face at 6. Mystery of the everyday, its silence, its symphony, its snake-like wavering. The next poem, the title is The Hardest Part, and it goes right into the poem. The hardest part is needing someone else to do everything. Take me to the bathroom, bring food, turn out the light. What I want is to rise like grass, sway with the wind. The next poem describes an experience in rehab, climbing stairs. Tom, the tough PT guy, wheels me in front of a steep set of stairs. No, I can't. He says, yes, you can. Up to now, my tasks have been easy, walking short distances, putting my hands on the wall and lifting each leg to the side and then behind me. I can see myself in black leotards and ballet slippers, executing pliés and jetés with precision and grace, legs leaping across the floor. At the bar, my kicks the highest. And I see my acrobatic solo, me in a costume of silver and turquoise sequins. I sit on the seat of my walker, determined to resist. Then I see myself in high school, late to class, my strong legs running upstairs to the 5th floor, my heavy book bag on my shoulder. Next, I see hands on the banisters, me pulling myself up the stairs, some at least. Following the second opinion. The first opinion was good, but I was waiting for the second to be thrilled. It agreed with the first. On the drive home, I called my family with the good news. You must be thrilled, they said, but I wasn't. Still to come, antibiotics, a CT scan in 3 months. When will finished come? When my body again becomes background? When I catch myself in a mirror and don't see frightened eyes? This next poem is entitled Eggplant and Osprey, and I really like the unlikely joining of an eggplant and an osprey. I wake realizing I have no plans. How can I use up this day? Then I remember that I might have another cancer and toss out the words use up. Phone call after phone call, I tell the same story over and over. At first, a release, then a bore. I peel the eggplant, arrange it in the colander, sprinkle salt to remove the bitterness. When I fry it, I'll try to control the flame to prevent oil from splattering. In so many poems, an observation of nature illuminates a feeling, suggests a way to reframe thoughts and actions. Like the osprey that perches on the white pine at high tide, sometimes finding fish, sometimes not, and still returning each day. This is the kind of guide I'm searching for. Salt to remove the bitterness, a way to contain the mess. Another country. Illness is another country. Words have a different meaning. In everyday life, positive is good. Not so with blood work results. And in the PET scan, what lights up, light is good, isn't it? Is negative. Cells out of control. In the hospital with nurses, doctors, physical therapists, I try to make our time together a visit. Try to learn something about them. Try to become a person to them. Every room in my house is a waiting room. Whether I read a book, bake a cake, watch TV, or Windex our glass tables, what I'm really doing is waiting. And one more. And the person who gave me the last word in this poem is here. And I thank her, Pam. Voice. And this is probably an experience that many of us have had. You sound like yourself, a chorus from my friends. Think of those early morning calls. You're not up yet, but grab the phone and say, hello. Your friend asks, did I wake you? No, you say, trying to hide the sleep in your voice. When I was sick, I didn't know I didn't sound like myself. How did I sound? I ask a friend. Afraid.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That was wonderful. And I'm picturing you in ballet slippers. Great image and great images. Thank you. So now we're going to move to another image. And Lucas, if you can put up Carol and the mirror. This is an image by Joyce Tennyson called Carol and the Mirror. And you can certainly see more of Joyce's remarkable portraits and other photographs on her website, which is tennyson.com. And I'll put that in the chat as well. So now we're going to hear from the West Coast, from Lynn Ellis. She's joining us from Seattle, Washington. And Lynn likes to say that she writes in pen. And I'm guessing that that's the source of some of the power in her words. Her language is gifted and surprising. Her imagery evocative. Lynn's poems have appeared or are forthcoming in Poetry Northwest, the Missouri Review, Sugar House Review, and Red Wheelbarrow, where she won the 2018 Poetry Prize, as well as WA 129 and elsewhere. A digital collection of pandemic broadsides co-created with Felicia Rice is available for free in an unlimited edition online at Moving Parts Press. her book of poems, In These Failing Times I Can Forget, by, I'm not sure I pronounced this right, Papachu Press, considers the human cost of rapid growth in a prosperous American city. I first met Lynn last spring during the 30 Poems in 30 Days challenge from Tupelo Press. And I was so impressed by the poems that she posted every single day that dealt with her challenges, her obsessions about the body images, her experiences with healthcare and surgery, and the way she uses unexpected imagery to express her ideas. So I immediately thought of her as we prepared for this theme, Poems for Healing. And I'm so glad to welcome Lynn to the Poets Corner today. Lynne Ellis.
Oh my gosh, Meg. Thank you so much. That was stunning. Yeah, thanks to Meg and Catherine for inviting me to be here. Thanks to Ellen for allowing me to read with her and sharing her experience of her journey through healthcare. And for all of you for jumping into the Zoom room. So hi, I'm a poet living in a place now called Seattle, Washington, on the ancestral lands of the Duwamish and Coast Salish people, a people who are still here, continuing to honor and bring light to their ancient heritage. It's important to me as a guest here to pay my real rent, which is a recurring monthly donation to the Duwamish tribe. And I encourage you to do the same in your area. Ellen, you are totally right about the voice. It's a huge part of how we move through the world. I also feel that very strongly here in this photo by Joyce Tennyson. It's no coincidence that voice is synonymous with identity. We even say we feel heard and that people around us respect us and validate our experiences. One of the most important ways I've felt cared for in my own medical journey was that people made an effort to hear me. I'll start with this poem forthcoming from Pontoon Poetry from Floating Bridge Press. Sympathetic resonance. My voice can pull harmonics from piano strings and rattle dishes in my kitchen. Hardwood floors buzz beneath my feet. A high note held is not a peak. It's a view of one mountain while standing on another. A week before my cut date, I float in warm water, mind, body tight. My handsome friend plays arpeggios on my left thigh. Bach feels like smooth algae and salt. Rachmaninoff presses on my sore spots. Chopin tickles skin the most. I tell him so. He likes the way my mouth looks when I laugh, the song shape of my lips. This next poem is in my chapbook, In These Failing Times I Can Forget, available at Papichu Press. The word peach is in there. It's the founder's childhood nickname. At the time that I wrote it, I was 35 and just starting to enter perimenopause, which for those of you who don't know, is the transition period between reproductive fertility and menopause menopause, of course, being the end of fertility. As Mary Ruefle says in her essay, Pause, how you respond to menopause is not up to you. It is up to your body. And though you believe now you can control your body, such is your strength after all that yoga, you cannot. At that time, my periods were becoming irregular, so I took a lot of negative pregnancy tests, and the hot flashes had started in on me. And I was thinking a lot about entering middle age and about desire. This is Cedar to the Storm. Rush me with the mouth flood of heavy tongue pool rain in April when the sky is green. Snap my weakest boughs, crown the splinters in clear pearls, cast shattered circles in each sphere, rings repeating upside down, wash each year into the sound, ring upon ring upon ring upon. Also in my mid-30s, I was diagnosed with a deleterious mutation in my BRCA1 cancer suppressor gene, which meant that I would have an exceptionally elevated lifetime risk of developing certain cancers, ovarian cancer being the largest threat to my life. I wrote this poem the day that the genetic test came back positive. It's also forthcoming from Pontoon Poetry. Diagnosis. Here comes the new info. Hornet swarms blow out the windows. Keep your cool. Cover your mouth with a hand and breathe through the bee veil. Lay out that plate of figs and cake and damn the flies. Damn each rotten seed. Pinch wasps at their waists and dodge the stings. Go out to the brood boxes, brush them with dung. Ready your honey claws for the pollen war. This concept of diagnosis is one of the ways in which I immediately connected with Ellen's book, Left Foot, Right Foot. It begins with the poem called After the Diagnosis. As patients, we're kind of linked by this word and a lot of other shared words and shared experiences. Diagnosis itself is like a trailhead. You get a map and a compass, but you don't know exactly how hard the climb will be, or what the viewpoints will show you, or where you'll have to scramble. The most important factor in good healing is access to good medical care, something that so many people lack here in one of the richest, most powerful countries in the world. I was very lucky. I got to work with a stunningly talented gynecological oncologist, Dr. Barbara Norquist, or Barb. She was an incredibly forward-thinking surgeon and researcher. And in the time that we worked together, she was in the middle of conducting a study to answer the very same question I was trying to answer, which was, what will happen to my experience of sexual pleasure after a total hysterectomy? Which really hasn't been studied all that much. And I wasn't exactly surprised given the way that the medical establishment has regarded women's bodies over history. I talked to at least 4 different doctors, most of them women, and no one could give me a definitive scientific answer. So using poetry as a means to direct healing, I wrote my own future narrative about what would happen after. You Will Be Ready / Total Hysterectomy. Double title, You Will Be Ready, Total Hysterectomy. There will be days in this medical experience when you feel like you're the only citizen of Pluto, landed right in the cardioid curve of its dry sea, as every spacecraft from Earth skips you and passes off to photograph some other beauty object. Even the Voyager ships with their golden records will ignore your out there underworld. The sounds of Earth does not contain the tin scrap music of the MRI machine or the thwick of the spring retracting blood draw needle. And though the sounds of BRCA1 is imprinted with these noises, you will also hear kinder human voices, laughter as it fills the vinyl flooring, and technicians willing to talk about anything. When it's time, you will be ready to release the loneliest parts of your body. And afterwards, you will wake up on a new planet, on a cliff above an unrelenting ocean, where all the creeks fill with waterfalls and moss breaks out in hungry piles on nurse logs. You will run your fingers over the wet green, the feather press and spring of it. So I believe this is an appropriate time to share a companion piece. This was written by my friend Michelle Bombardier, and it came out with the Journal of the American Medical Association right as we were doing sort of the prep work for this reading. So it was perfect. It's from the Journal of American Medical Association Poetry and Medicine section, dated December 7th, 2021. It's called A Short Flight in a Small Room. I liked my nurse immediately. Ramrod posture, slight swagger, dragon tattoos. I didn't expect when she took my hand between her blue gloved ones and said, "Squeeze me when it hurts, I can take it." That I'd feel lifted as if in a basket and she was the balloon. The doctors darted about the room, white-winged and capped, goggled and muffled. I was both out of my body and in, my breast punctured and radiated, gripped in its plastic cage but far below me, as if held captive in some hidden valley. The machines made their shooting noises. Eyes above masks narrowed and searched, but hers stayed soft and I kept tethered. I wonder if the soul sometimes rocks itself loose of its warm-blooded house. I wonder if it flies in short bursts, like the golden crowned sparrow, singing its steady but lilting three-note song. If you want more of that, Michelle has a book out, What We Do. I wish I could read all those poems for you today, but keep an eye out for her reading. And when I ran across this one, I was shocked because I had had the same experience during an MRI-assisted breast procedure of a nurse offering me their blue glove hand. And that was sort of my connection to, to the ground at the time. We all come into this arena with our own loves and fears and goals and feelings, and we all progress through the same procedures. There's a script, and in this way we're all connected to the people who went through this before us. It's a collaboration. It's a very specific collective intelligence, and that's a gratitude that I have. So thanks to Michelle Bombardier for letting me use her piece in this.
Thank you, Lynn. That was wonderful. I just loved hearing you read your poems, and thank you for sharing Michelle Bombardier's poem as well. You know, when we were preparing for this, we thought what fun it would be to just each select a poem of someone else's, and thank you for sharing that one as well. And Ellen, I think you have one also that you'd like to share.
I do, but first I want to say just how wonderful hearing you read your poems was, and amazing in the last one that you took us to a different planet, and the idea of the illness journey and the recovery journey and all of those things. It's just terrific. So the poem that I chose has reference to healing in terms of appreciation of life, of the daily life. And it's a poem that's been a favorite of mine for a long time. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, Otherwise by Jane Kenyon. And in this poem, the repetition is so strong, as are the details of her day. Otherwise by Jane Kenyon. I got out of bed on two strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk. Oh, right. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birch wood. All morning, I did the work I love. At noon, I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed in a room with paintings on the walls and planned another day just like this day. But one day, I know it will be otherwise. And the knowledge in that last statement, the shift from might to will, underlines the preciousness.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you both for sharing those other poems and introducing that in the mix. If we have time at the end, I might share one myself. So not one of mine, one of someone else's, but I want to move, keep us moving along. And so, Lucas, if you could put the next image, Scapes on Table, up. This is another image by Artie Caponegro. And it will be on the screen in a minute. Just a beautiful image.
And it's absolutely beautiful for the poem Otherwise, which when I chose that poem, we hadn't had the whole order of things. And it's perfect for the first poem that I'm going to read, which Jane Kenyon's poem perfectly set the stage for it. And some things, going through illness, some things change. And all of a sudden, when I was starting to recover, for some reason, I thought, well, what are my favorite words? And the word ordinary just became such a wonderful word to me. The poem is entitled A Layer of Ordinary. Illness covers the daily the way snow hides the lawn, the garden. Everything is doctor visits, blood work, scans. A blizzard's on its way. Still, tomorrow, no matter the wind, Vic will trudge to the bird feeder, fill it, replace the suet, hold on to routines. I'll make myself a cup of coffee, gradually pouring the boiled water over the grounds. Everything will be the aroma of normal. The next poem is entitled Retrieval. And I was really, when I was sick, in a very reduced state. I really didn't know at the time how reduced. Mostly my daughter, but also my husband tell me what I was like. And so there was a lot that I wasn't aware of and that I didn't remember. And this poem is entitled Retrieval. Words fly away like birds. I try to remember what, when. The night ride in the ambulance to the hospital, just before the operation, butterscotch pudding, the birds that came to our feeder in July, the last book I read, how many times I pressed the call button, my favorite swimming stroke, a conversation with one of the doctors, what I ate for breakfast. How is it different? What I remember on my own and what Vic and Emily tell me. So this next poem was a big gift. It's entitled My Mind Changed, a big gift and a big relief. My mind changed, not forced like bulbs in winter, but suddenly. For months, I've been wanting to open the door into my hospital days, to know what happened to me. Friends kept saying, "You're lucky you don't remember." But not remembering felt like being banished from my house, my key lost. And then, as if I signed a peace treaty in my sleep, I'm content to let it rest. And one of the things about that poem, recovery is hard work. I'm sure many people here know that from personal experience or observing others. But this just happened, so sometimes if you don't have to work at something, but it just happens, that's great. This next poem is entitled Left Foot, Right Foot, and it's dedicated to my husband, Vic, and also with gratitude to a friend, Jackie Johnson, whose painting appears on the cover of my book and helped to lead me to the title, and also provided an image of recovery. In this poem, I quote words of my husband's. So I think it's probably clear, but if you were reading it, his words would be in italics. So I'm going to raise my finger. Hopefully you'll see it. I'm going to raise my finger when it's his words, so you'll know. Left foot, right foot. Beside my coffee cup one morning, a 12-page document. Vic's emails to friends and family. Symptoms, diagnoses, treatments, 12 pages of discoveries. I didn't know I started out in the ICU, often slept through Vic and Emily's visits. I stay still for a while, looking out at Broad Cove. As the tide returns, I return to Vic's words and read them again. The tide is in and the osprey family is in the treetops, digging into their afternoon catch. Geese in V formation and a pair of bald eagles fly over the house. I frown, imagining those months for Vic and Emily. I'm in the moment and looking no further. In the meantime, I really miss my sweet Ellen. I'm feeling encouraged with one hand on the guardrail. I find humor. A good day, though Ellen did try to chew on the birthday cake on Matey's pop-up birthday card. We make allowances. And I hear the mantra of recovery. Left foot, right foot. This next poem is dedicated to my daughter, Emily. Cupcake. The other night while we were watching TV, I said to Vic, I lost my birthday this year. It was during the second week in the hospital when they were draining my hormones and replacing them in preparation for surgery. My memory gone along with the hormones. He said, no, you didn't. Emily brought you a cupcake with a candle. I asked, what kind? He didn't know. Emily tells me lemon, and I think tart and sweet. See a perfect cupcake, not too big, pale yellow icing, and a candle, ready to be lit. Traces. This title also goes right into the poem. Traces of fox and deer across the snowy field, marks made while I slept. At night, when we watch TV, I sneak a look at Vic's profile. And as he sleeps, I look for markers of my illness on his face. Emily asks about the details of my day, listens so attentively. Is she on the lookout for a whiff of my hospital self. Good test result after good test result. Still, when I recall an upcoming CT scan, I frown. I think of how the aroma of wine remains in the glass long after the first sip. And the last poem that I'm going to read is the last poem in the book. And the title is a sentence, I guess. I no longer have a favorite color. And it was just going through my mind like a refrain for quite a while. And I just had it. And now I have the poem. I no longer have a favorite color. In illness, distinctions dissolve. It's simply color or no color, heartbeat or no heartbeat. As night approaches, I welcome each shade of blue, from robin's egg to indigo. And waking to a modest sunrise, I recall the extravagance of yesterdays, both a promise of the coming day. Almost dying removes preferences. What's better about grass than a layer of fallen leaves?
Oh, thank you so much, Ellen. You know, somebody said it best in the chat. She said, these poems are medicine.
Mm.
They really are. And do you have a copy of your book? I should have had my copy in here, but
Am I holding?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect, perfect. So people can see that wonderful image on the cover. So, great. Thank you so much for reading.
Such a great pleasure.
The next image for the screen is by Connie Imboden. And oh, my husband just brought me a copy.
Okay, and can I just say one thing, that I thank Jackie for the images, and I see her face now. I want to personally thank Artie for the beautiful images that just enriched my poems.
Thank you. Lucas, do you have Connie's image to put on the screen?
Which image is that?
It's the last image.
Oh, yes, I do.
The fourth one. Yeah.
Here it is.
Great. So I'm not sure if Connie is on today, but her images are so incredible. They always involve photographing the human form in ways that are distorted by water or mirrors, broken mirrors, filters, colored filters, but they evoke mystical and mythological resonances for us. And so Lynn chose this image that Connie Imboden very generously offered to allow us to use to introduce her next series of poems. So we're back to Lynn Ellis, and I'll put Connie's website in the chat. Thank you.
Ellen, it is so wonderful to hear these words of your experience coming to help other people get through illness and long healing. I feel like I'm watching a sage read, and that's a real pleasure. As an avid evening watcher myself, those changing blues in I No Longer Have a Favorite Color really resonate with me. Talking about the absence of color during illness or grief. And I chose, the image of the distorted body as a bridge between between your collection and the subjects that I'm going to get into now. A really big part of successful healing is healing medically is healing the emotive, spiritual parts of the mind and body as well. So I'm going to address that, kind of move away from biography and get into more of that concept. This poem addresses grief. Seamstress. I wear her as the decomposing dress we sewed together in her life. I wear her every day, on streets, on mountain paths. In summer slick, I wear her in the ocean. Her sleeves are pushing thin at elbows. Her unwound selvage rips through backstitched seams. These ragged bits have knitted with my skin. And if we skimped on fabric quality or bought thread on the cheap from backyard bins, embroider it all too hastily, forgive. Each scrap of cloth which splits, each button falling off, each unhinged stitch sloughs her away, undone by air and time and water's pull. And so I have to lose her twice. Grief is a tangible thing. It lives in our bodies, inside the nerves. It can disrupt our organs. And sometimes we have to really name a thing before we can get it to unstick, which is a big part of my healing process, is writing it. This next poem helped me move some grief through my own body, and I like to think that it transformed it into something with a little beauty. When my love for you was a body in the world. A viola is simply wood and glue. It will decompose in dirt. The morning after my mentor died, you drove me to the Columbia River. It's all we could think to do. With early light, pink on the straw-backed hills, I sang short hymns on the balcony of our road motel. My mentor still a body in the world. You slept on, unembarrassed to hear me sing alone. A viola is not good at holding pitch. That first measure, though, that'll split the chest. Popped and bloody, wire abandoning in all directions. When the comet Neowise arrived in midsummer 2020, a great cultural moment in the form of a swell of popularity of anti-racism and the Black Lives Matter movement arrived as well. Trump's government responded with violence and terror. And I wrote this poem in part to help move that terror through me. It first appeared in 365 Days of COVID from Sunday Mornings at the River. Stargazers. July rose night blooms, jasmine in our moon garden. Hands inside our clothes, cat hackles on our arms, two chins tilted up. The sky on fire, this deck itself a ship, we navigated as best we knew how. What a faulty time. We were alive in a nation drowning. The ocean flooding in around the hull ribs, iridescent fish swimming up the liver, an octopus cached in the stomach, a country of heavy lungs. The rapid breath of citizens kidnapped by soldiers as more soldiers made their way to our city. What comfort could a rose, a house, a vow, or comet bring? What love or balm for clicking bone? We're still going through this national grief. I don't think any of us have had a chance to heal from it yet. So I think it's really important that we keep writing. Please keep writing. As a community of poets, we are responsible for committing a culture's narrative to the page, no matter how hopeless it feels like while we're in the middle of it. I took comfort in the idea that with stargazers, no matter what happens, my words might fill that historical space. During the first 2 years of the COVID pandemic, I was very lucky to have the chance to collaborate with Felicia Rice. She wanted to reach into new technologies and definitions of fine art printmaking, and had this idea to create a series of digital broadsides available to the reader to download and distribute for free in an unlimited edition. I'll put the link in the chat right now. Here's where you can find the collection, and I will share my screen. The Oak. Grief comes as held breath in a country of heavy lungs. Oh, what a faulty time. We are alive in a nation cut open. Let us show our incision to a compassionate needle. Let us suture. Let us write this next part in careful ink. In a tick-tock, lightning strikes an oak, opens a window to its burning whorl heartwood. Someone in comments calls it a hellmouth. The tree's still alive, still slowly growing, its leaves still green. Respiration continues and bark. Xylem draws new water in, a nation wounded at its taproot. Someone in comments argues the oak is a metaphor for modern America. I argue the oak is much older. Stop doom scrolling. Take the wound outside, show it to the sun. This idea of showing a wound to the sun actually came from our United States Poet Laureate Joy Harjo during a reading that she did with former Poet Laureate Natasha Trethewey back in January 2021 at ASU. And in the blurb from that event, there's something that still really resonates with me, which is the act of reading or writing a poem are both ways of remembering and manifesting the world we want to live in, singing ourselves into being. I have one more poem for you. Before I read it, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. I hope you found some comfort here. This is from my chapbook, In These Failing Times I Can Forget, available through Papichu Press. It was written before the pandemic, but it actually contains a lot of the same themes relevant to the past few years, including the need to take time and find rest and respite, and hopefully cuddled up with a warm friend or lover, because really, this is how we heal. About the body. And I love you best when you are half awake. Your eyelids are not thick enough to hold the night before. You pause and stare me down as though you'd never seen my face. Dreams of flood all night, and in the morning we take in B vitamins and crosswords, comfort in familiar places. Green velvet sofa wearing thin aloe vera in the window. This is the day I love you. This is the day the newspapers fill with despots sneering across continents. How large and lonely it must feel to subjugate a nation. In our corner of the country, clouds shred just like old leaves and lift between two trees planted 2 body lengths apart. And what about the body? This is a poem about the body, about feeling the bones beneath your skin for the first time in weeks, about my palm over your red t-shirt, over your sternum, over your marmot heart, about our bodies in this time and after. Dreams of yellow dust all night and your dear face pillowed there, pine needle duff in your copper beard. And if I knew you now when we were 20, would I choose you then? Before the earthbound friends, before the hospitals and broken teeth, before the forest fires, would I plant 2 trees just so far apart as our own bodies asleep, palm the bark, watch the tattered sky? A forest pulls itself down. A raptor tears its prey apart. What a terror it is growing old, yet I have touched your nose tip with my own and know some event horizon will hold the record of our voices. This is the day the sun sets before we rise. Along the block, the still trees shine with winter lights. They trap white stars in their basket branches. This is the night I hold your cheek. Your beard curls soft into my palm. It's someone's birthday at the corner bar. In this vandalized world, we are not born alone. We can hear the singing. Thank you.
My, what a beautiful, beautiful poem to end on. It's just such a love poem. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Thank you both. I mean, I just feel like there's this embarrassment of riches that you've shared with us. And for me, it's been so incredibly healing. And some of the topics that you touched on in this last section, Lynn, about grief and what's going on in the country. And, you know, the poems are healing on so many levels. They know the personal and the communal level. So I'd like to, you know, invite people to put questions in the chat. I'm seeing lots of comments and just comments about what astonishing work has been shared with us today. And I just, you know, if we could clap that, we'd have a standing ovation here for both of you. We would. But I'm going to move right into some questions because I'd love to hear you both talk about sort of the importance of poetry, both writing it, reading it, how it's worked for you in your healing process or in understanding the world, if you could. Ellen, would you like to just take that on first? It's a big, broad.
Yeah, it's a big topic. I'll say a few things, not everything I could say, so that Lynn has a chance to, and other people. But it was really crucial in my recovery process. I think illness narrows the self, and writing is a way of claiming and reclaiming things, writing about things. Many people have talked about how writing about something, particularly difficult experiences, connects you more closely, but also allows you to separate from it. It's not an experience that is just the grief in your body or whatever, but it's on the page. And you can see it, you can re-see it, you can work with it, you can shape it. And for me, I don't know, I have to think more about this, but recovery and revision, you know, the revision process in poetry and the way you get something down and it's all one stanza. And then you look at it again and really it should be divided up. There needs to be more space between the things you're saying. All of those kinds of things are critical. I just like to give one quote by Mark Doty, which I think relates to what I'm saying. What is healing but a shift in perspective? And so that's what writing about something and then going back to it allows. There's much more to say. Lynn?
Yeah, I really like that idea of writing as revising one's own mind. I've found that a poem teaches me something as I'm writing it, and you know, the poems that I most admire are when someone shows me something that I've always known but never really grokked. So turning to those wise poets, and everybody's going to have their own list. Turning to those people as teachers that you can really access at any time. You can turn to a book of poetry at 3 a.m. when you wake up feeling helpless. That is one role that poetry has played in my life. I kind of come to this from a strange perspective. I did not have an illness. I have a genetic condition, and so I had a pre-illness. My nurses always called me a pre-vivor. So I took steps to make sure that I would not get sick. But still, when you are, and I've been in like desperate medical situations before, and so I know that when you're there, you really have no choice. You must resolve. And for me, finding resolve was very difficult, and writing my own resolve was how I did it, frankly, and my amazing support system at home. So yeah, that's.
I love that poem that you shared, Lynn, where you wrote your own future. You wrote your own answers when people couldn't give you answers. And that was just a beautiful, I don't know, example of what poetry can do.
Thanks. Yeah, that was actually informed by, researching the topic. Again, the question of what happens to the experience of pleasure when one removes part of one's body. A lot of that information came from YouTubers, anecdotes. And of course, my doctors were saying, it tends to be that, et cetera, or, we have seen people report that if they had satisfaction in this area before the procedure, then they'll have satisfaction in this area later, that kind of thing. But I wanted a guarantee. So I made one.
I love it. I love it. We have a great question in the chat here that just says the content you're addressing is enormous, which it is. I mean, you've covered a huge span in this topic of poems for healing. And it's asking if you could share thoughts about what to share and what not to share, and when not to speak in an understated manner. Yeah, and I'm going to add to that too, because, and maybe confuse it a little, but because I've been struggling with my own grief. I had a nephew that died of an overdose recently. You can tell it's really up there. And I've been writing, and sometimes writing, and I've heard you can't, lots of things about how you write about something, that you can't write in the moment while you're in it. But I do, because that's the way I am. But Ellen's comments earlier, then I'll go back and look at it later, and it shapes it into a poem, not just spewing on the piece of paper. So I think that there's something there about how do you write about something, without, what do you say and what do you not say? And it's a really interesting question for me. Do either of you want to take that on?
Well, it was in with this particular book, it wasn't such a big thing. I mean, I like spare, and I didn't want to say too much, and didn't want to repeat, and want to an important thing for me, and something that the poems that I most like affect my mind and heart, and leave space, have openings for the reader. And then for me, when I go back to the poem. So those were considerations. I think when you're writing about other people's lives, there's a complicated question of what you write. And everybody has their own solution that they come to with that.
Yeah. Meg, I'm really sorry about your nephew. That's
you.
awful. Yeah, so the question, the original question was, how do you know what to write? Am I correct?
The question is what do you say and what do you hold back, kind of, what do you share and what don't you share? And
Right.
what do you maybe say in a different, more understated way?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the craft of that is. I mean, the short answer is that when I sit down to write, I share everything. So it all, I think, Meg, you were talking about just, penning pages and pages of everything that's inside of you and getting it out there. And then the question, the craft of it is how to cut, right?
Right.
I tend to make sure that the sound of it is ruling the poem, is guiding the poem. And, honestly, I don't get a lot into the physical details of what I experience. I look for that meaning. So for example, the total hysterectomy poem, it's not about what it feels like within my body. It's about what I am planning for. It's about the dream of it. It's truly a poem about taking a hike, right? And relating that. So I let the central metaphor drive that.
Yeah, I think I hear that in your poems, and I hear that in what you're saying. You use the metaphor. And I think I was hearing Ellen saying she uses kind of the space between the essence, the paring down to, we don't have to say it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's true. And I think it's not cutting, or I don't think of it as cutting as much as shaping, as what becomes the poem later. And I also love one of you said, I write to discover what I'm thinking or saying, it's unexpected. And then the best poems, I think, sometimes are ones that you've learned something you didn't know when you started to write.
Right. Also, there's a piece of advice I've never forgotten, which is, this came from the Washington State Poet Laureate, Todd Marshall, a few years ago, which he said, you never have to show these drafts to anyone, and so, you write the same poem over and over again, and then one day you sit down to write the poem again and it just works, which may not be helpful as a craft talk, but that's been my experience, and I also really enjoy staring at something for like a month and reworking the same thing and then putting it away and then trying to rewrite that.
Yeah, that really answers one of the other questions in the chat. Do you ever write another updated version of the same poem as the emotion or memory shifts? And it sounds like you really do that. You'll put it away and come back.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is that true for you, Ellen?
Well, yeah, and going back to Mark Doty's quote about a shift in perspective. I mean, anything. Occasionally I go back and look at a poem I wrote 10 years ago, and I'm happy that I have that poem that shows me that I was seeing things that way. But now I see it either differently or other aspects. So that's, yes, you definitely come back. And then definitely there are some poems or some topics that take a while, that you can't write about right away. But somehow with these poems for Left Foot, Right Foot, and it was such an all-encompassing experience for me. And then I couldn't really do that much during recovery. I couldn't walk to the mailbox. So it was a lot of time to write. And so the writing was very illuminating and healing, and sometimes disturbing, but that was good. And then sequencing it, having all the poems and deciding on the order and making it into a book. So rather than all these fragments of experience, I have this, which is a wonderful container. So, and I came to like that word in terms of thinking about the healing aspect of writing, that it becomes the container.
I love that word, container. And also what you said about sequencing. You know, it's a way of giving a new perspective to the experience. Wendy Rappaport made a comment in the chat that research shows that writing heals through identification, grieving, repurposing, wonderful word, and that people accept their new normal in a better way. It's very interesting. I think that sequencing is a way of making sense out of our lives or out of the world. I mean, Lynn, you wrote about some topics that were, I think, national in scope, that weren't as much personal, but they were personal in their impact on you. Could you talk a little bit about that process?
Sure. Yeah. So the project of the project of A Virus Held Us, the poems of the pandemic broadsides, was very much centered on my experience of the COVID pandemic and my trying to get meaning out of that and connect these sort of huge world events that were happening as I was writing, which is very, very hard. So I turned my focus to love and, what's important to me. I enjoyed having that voice, and I enjoyed thinking about who might be reading these and what they might need to read at the time, if that makes sense. It's a project that takes a lot of research, and I always feel like my research is not done. I always feel like a big dummy when I'm writing these things, because I'm coming to it from a very specific perspective. I'm a white presenting, upper middle class person in a liberal city. I have access to good healthcare. I have my needs met. I have a good support system. I have parents that love me. I have a husband, and I've got friends. So that's a place where I can rest in and look at these national events in a sort of, I think Ellen mentioned this as a detached perspective.
We're coming to a close here, and I want to just take a moment to again thank our photographers that lent us their images to use as these interstitials, if you will, and to kind of set mood and tone. And so I want to thank Artie Caponegro and Joyce Tennyson and Connie Imboden. And I don't know if Lynn or Ellen, you just want to say a word about imagery in that form and how that works for you with your poetry, or why you chose these images.
Well, I knew Artie's photography a little bit, and I was really one of the things, I think it's a thread or a theme through Left Foot, Right Foot, is looking to the natural world for solace, for learning, for pleasure, for all kinds of things. So those images, the beauty of the everyday, but the first one, Tree and Boat, or Boat and Tree, the mystery of it, the otherworldly nature of it, the kind of transforming of the ordinary objects into something extraordinary. So I love those. And the grace, grace is something that I like, gracefulness. The grace of the garlic scapes just captured me.
Ellen, I mentioned this to you before when you showed me that photo. Garlic scapes were actually a huge thing for me at the very beginning of the pandemic. We had just joined one of those community supported agriculture programs, and garlic scapes came in our first box, and I was like, what is this amazing vegetable? I can just eat this raw. It's so good. So thanks for connecting that as well. I'll remember the garlic scapes.
And your images?
Yeah, so Joyce's Carol and Mirror was immediately so striking for many reasons. The perspective of seeing a person from that angle was very unusual to me. I felt like it connected to these themes because often we, in healing and illness, we have to view ourselves from a position that we've never seen before, how is this even possible? I loved the image also because the shape of the woman's body was something that I found a lot of kinship with, and it's a shape that is not represented well in popular culture. And the real cincher for me was that this, and I don't want to, Joyce, I don't want to project what your photograph means, but having the female body, female appearing body holding this tiny mirror that she could then, use to view herself from any perspective. And again, I'm making the assumption that it's a woman. It's not necessarily true, but having this mirror that this person could hold and view themselves from in very close proximity from various perspectives, that sort of idea is really what cinched me on that piece. Yeah.
Nice.
And the second one.
Yeah.
I was looking for a bridge between moving from narrative of medical experience to narrative of grief and larger national topics. And Connie Imboden's image really grabbed me that way because of the distortions.
Yeah, her images are, very evocative, I think, and you never know what it's gonna bring up or resonate in me. Thank you. So thank you to our photographers, and thank you to both of you. This has been, somebody said it in here, it's been, your poetry has been medicine. Your poems are profound. This has been a form of healing for me, I think, and for so many people who came to listen today. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
And I
Thank you so
hope you'll
much.
all come back in February. February 13th, the second Sunday of the month, will be Love is Still Possible.
Thank you.
Indeed. Indeed. And thank you so much, Meg. This was just such a pleasure, and you've made such a contribution with the Poets Corner. It's great.
Thank you. It's a labor of love here. So,
It's very exciting to see everyone interested in poetry. You
yes,
know, we have a shared love and we're all here to celebrate it. It's so good.
it's great. Thank you. Gonna say goodbye now.